Welcome back to the deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start today by asking you to look down. Just for a second. Look at the ground beneath your feet. What do you see? Maybe it's a tile floor, maybe it's pavement, maybe you're lucky and it's grass. But do you truly understand what that is?
I think most people don't really.
And I don't just mean, is it dirt? Is it silica? I mean, do you see it as the literal bank account of the nation?
That's a great way to put it.
Do you see the millions of years of violent geological history that dictate exactly why you have a job, why your food costs what it costs, and, frankly, why certain parts of this country are prone to disasters that wipe out billions of dollars in seconds?
It's a profound shift in perspective. You know, we walk on the land every single day and we treat it as sort of a stage for our lives.
Right, just the background.
Exactly. But in reality, the land is the scriptwriter. It dictates the plot of our economic destiny.
The scriptwriter. That is the perfect way to put it. And today, we are doing something a little bit different. We aren't just giving you a geography lesson.
No, this is much more than that.
We are conducting a strategic deep dive into NCERT Class 10, Chapter 1, Resources and Development, and we're also pulling in some key ideas from Chapter 3 on water resources. But, and here is the twist, we are designing this specifically for the serious learner.
For the UPSC aspirant, for the person who needs to know why this matters, not just what it is.
Exactly.
And that's why this episode is brought to you by Simplified UPSC by PPP. And before we get into the tectonic shifts of the syllabus, we have a humble request.
We do.
If you find value in this deep dive, if this helps you connect the dots in a way that the textbooks, just don't, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It really helps the algorithm find other serious learners just like you.
Yes. And listen, putting together this kind of high-quality content, it takes time, it takes resources.
Yeah.
So if you are capable, and only if you are capable, please consider supporting us on Patreon. That support is what allows us to keep the lights on and keep bringing this super useful content to you. You know who you are, our amazing community of supporters, and we want to give a huge shout out to you right now. You are the ones who helped create this.
We really appreciate it. Also, don't forget to like the video and share your valuable comments. Tell us what clicked for you. It genuinely helps boost retention and gets this knowledge out to more people.
One last housekeeping note before we crack open the books. We know you need notes. We know you need practice.
Of course.
Free notes with practice. Previous year questions, or PYQs, are available right now on the public Telegram channel.
However, for those who want the premium experience, we call it the private Telegram library, where you can get access to all the videos of this series at once, along with organized premium notes, detailed explanations, extra PYQs, and model mains answers.
Which is a game changer.
It is. You need to DM us on the public Telegram channel to join. It's a real treasure trove for the serious aspirant who wants to streamline their prep.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this. We are decoding the resource and development chapter, but like we said, we're doing it backwards.
Backwards is the only way to move forward in this exam. It really is. If you just read the NCERT, you get facts, you get a list of things.
Right, just data points.
But if you read the questions first, you get the context. We are linking the static textbook concepts directly to the actual questions asked by the UPSC over the last decade, spanning from 2013 all the way to 2025.
So no rote memorization.
Zero. Absolutely zero. Rote memorization fails under pressure.
Okay.
Our mission today is to move beyond definitions. We need to understand the application of resource geography.
Okay.
We need to see how a boring, a seemingly boring sentence in the NCERT becomes a complex 15-mark question in the mains exam.
I love that approach. It's about seeing the matrix behind the text. So let's start with the canvas itself. Part 1, the anatomy of Indian land.
The foundation.
The NCERT gives us a breakdown of India's relief features. It's essentially a pie chart in text form. We have plains at 43%, mountains at 30%, and plateaus at 27%. Now, on the surface, these are just numbers. Why should a future bureaucrat, a future DM, care if it's 43% or 53%?
Because those percentages, they're not just numbers, they are the blueprint of national planning. Let's just take that first one, 43% plains.
Okay.
That is nearly half the country. Just pause and think about that. Compare that to a nation like, say, Japan, which is mostly mountainous. The fact that India has 43% flat, fertile land is probably the only reason we can support a population of 1.4 billion.
It's our food basket.
It is the absolute foundation of our food security. Without it, the entire story of India is different.
Okay, so plains equals agriculture. That seems pretty basic on the surface. But let's dig deeper. How does the UPSC test this? I'm looking at a question from the 2013 Civil Services prelim.
Let's hear it.
It asks about crops, cotton, groundnut, rice, and wheat. And it asks you to identify the kharif crops among them.
A classic. And this is where the geography meets the economy. You can't just memorize rice is kharif. I mean, you can, but you won't understand it. You have to understand why.
Right. What makes it a kharif crop?
The plains, specifically the alluvial plains of the Gangetic Belt and the coastal plains. They provide the soil depth, the fertility, and the water retention capacity. Kharif crops are monsoon crops.
They need a lot of water.
A ton of water. They need standing water, they need heat, and the plains provide the perfect flat surface area to hold that monsoon water.
Right. You can't grow paddy on a steep 45-degree slope in the Himalayas.
Of course not.
It would just wash right away.
It would wash away in an hour. So when UPSC asks about kharif crops like rice or cotton or groundnut, they're implicitly asking about the utilization of that 43% landmass during the monsoon season.
I see. And what about wheat?
Wheat, on the other hand, is a rabi crop, a winter crop. It needs the cool, temperate winters of the North Indian plains. So if we didn't have this specific relief feature, this vast flat table, our entire cropping pattern, and therefore our entire agrarian economy, would be completely unrecognizable.
So the land dictates the menu. That makes perfect sense. Now let's talk about the 27%, the plateaus.
Like the treasure chest.
Exactly. The NCERT calls the Plateau region the treasure chest of minerals, fossil fuels, and forests.
It's a very romantic term, the treasure chest, but it's accurate. This is the Deccan Plateau, the Chotan-Nagpur Plateau. This is the geological vault of India. All our mineral wealth is locked in there.
But here's where I get a little confused. If the plateau is where the treasure is, the iron ore, the coal, the bauxite, then logic would dictate that that's where the factories should be, right? You dig it up, you process it right there to save money on transport.
That is the classic logic. It's a famous theory in economic geography. It's called Weber's theory of industrial location.
Weber's theory.
Okay.
Break that down for us.
Alfred Weber, he was a German economist, and he basically said that if your raw material is heavy and it loses a lot of weight during production, like when you make steel from iron ore and coal, you should build your factory near the mine.
A weight-losing industry.
Precisely. You don't want to pay to transport tons and tons of waste rock across the country. It's just not economical. And this is why, a place like Jamshedpur is where it is. It's right on top of the resource.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. I'm with you. But then why did the UPSC ask this question in 2020? This is from the GS1 paper, question 7. Account for the present location of iron and steel industries away from the source of raw material. That seems to completely contradict Weber's theory, doesn't it?
It doesn't contradict it. It complicates it. And this is exactly why this kind of deep dive matters. The answer gives you the static fact, minerals are in the plateau.
Right.
The UPSC asks about the dynamic shift. Why are steel plants now moving to the coast? Why are we seeing them in Vizag or Ratneri?
So is it because we ran out of minerals in the plateau? Is the treasure chest empty?
No, not at all. The iron is still there. But the recipe for making steel has changed. Or rather, our access to one key ingredient has.
The recipe.
To make high-quality steel, you need high-quality coking coal. Now, India has a lot of coal, but most of it is high in ash content.
Yeah.
It's not great for modern blast furnaces. So we have to import coking coal.
From where?
Mostly from Australia or Indonesia.
Okay, I see the logistics problem now. If you're importing coal to a port, say on the East Coast, and the iron ore is deep inland in the plateau in Jharkhand or Odisha.
You've got it. If you build the plant in the plateau, you have to pay to transport the imported coal all the way inland on railways. That's very expensive.
But if you build the plant at the port,
then you only have to bring the iron ore down to the coast. Plus, a lot of that steel is meant for export anyway, so you're right there at the port, ready to ship it out.
So the market pull and the import necessity override the original raw material pull.
That's a perfect summary. The geography of the resource remains the same, but the economics of the industry have completely shifted the map. You cannot answer that 2020 question if you don't first understand the base fact from Chapter 1 that the raw material is locked in that 27% relief feature.
That is fascinating. It's a story of globalization written on the map of India. Okay, let's move to the final piece of the pie. The mountains, 30% of our land area. The NCERT says they ensure perennial river flow, tourism, and ecological aspects.
That phrase, ecological aspects, is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
It sounds lovely, doesn't it? It sounds like a travel brochure. Come to the mountains. We have perennial rivers and ecological aspects. But in the context of the exam, and frankly, just looking at the news these days, that sounds more like a warning to me.
It is a warning. It absolutely is. When you read mountains ensure perennial flow, you're talking about the great gift of the Himalayas, the glaciers that feed our rivers. But you have to pair that with the geology.
Oh, that's the geology.
These are young, fold mountains. Geologically, they are infants. They're still rising. They are incredibly unstable.
Which brings us directly to the 2016 GS1 paper, question 14. The Himalayas are highly prone to landslides.
There it is, the flip side of the resource. The NCERT says mountains are great for tourism. What does tourism require?
Roads, hotels, tunnels, infrastructure.
Infrastructure. And when you blast a tunnel through a young, geologically unstable mountain,
You destabilize the slope.
you destabilize the slope, you alter the natural drainage patterns. So the resource, which is the tourism potential, drives a form of development that directly exacerbates the hazard, which is the landslides.
So when the question asks for the causes,
You have to mention both. You have to mention the natural fragility, the tectonic activity, the steep slopes, the heavy rainfall. But you must also mention the anthropogenic factors, the unplanned construction, the deforestation, the road building.
we are treating that 30% mountain zone as if it were the 43% plains.
That's a powerful way to put it.
We're building on it as if it's flat and stable,
Yeah.
and it just isn't.
And the land always, always fights back.
Okay, let's pivot from the land itself to how we even decide what a resource is. This is part 2 of our deep dive, resource classification. The NCERT makes a very specific point that I think most people just read and forget. It says resources are not just things. They are a function of technology, feasibility, and culture.
This is one of my favorite concepts in all of geography. It's what I call the phantom pile theory.
Phantom pile.
Think about a pile of uranium ore in the year 1500 AD. Was it a resource?
No, it was just a weird-looking rock, maybe
Ever- yeah.
poisonous.
Exactly. It was just a weird rock. It didn't become a resource until we developed the technology of nuclear fission.
The technical part.
Found a way to mine and enrich it cost-effectively.
Economic feasibility.
And our society accepted nuclear power or weapons as necessary or desirable.
The cultural part.
Exactly. The rock didn't change. We changed. Our relationship to the rock changed.
So a resource isn't a fixed object. It's a relationship between nature and human capability.
Precisely. Which is why the definition of resource is always changing. Solar energy has always been there. The sun has been hitting India for billions of years. But it's only in the last, decade or two that it's become a major economic resource.
Speaking of solar, let's look at the 2025 GS1 paper, question 6. Explain briefly the ecological and economic benefits of solar energy generation in India.
This is a beautiful question. It's beautiful because it forces you to look beyond the obvious and think about the economic side of a renewable resource. Everyone knows the ecological benefit.
Right, it's clean, no carbon emissions, that's the easy part.
That's the easy part. But what is the economic benefit? What does it really mean for the country's balance sheet?
Well, the fuel is free, right, the sun?
Yeah.
So cheaper power eventually.
Eventually, yes, that's part of it. But think bigger. Think macroeconomics. What is India's single biggest import bill?
Crude oil and natural gas, energy.
Exactly. We bleed foreign exchange reserves to buy energy from other countries. Every single unit of solar power we generate is a unit of energy we don't have to import.
So it strengthens the rupee.
It strengthens the rupee, it lowers our current account deficit, and critically, it provides energy security. That is the true economic benefit. It's not just about your electricity bill, it's about national sovereignty.
But there's a catch with solar and wind, isn't there? It's not like coal where you can just burn it whenever you want. The sun goes down, the wind stops blowing.
The problem of intermittency. And this brings us to a very technical PYQ that listeners often gloss over. It's from the 2014 prelims, question 11, Green Energy Corridor.
I remember seeing this. It sounds like a buzzword. A bit of jargon. Is it just a special kind of wire?
In a way, yes, but a very, very smart wire. Here is the problem. The best solar potential in India is in the deserts of Rajasthan, or the hot, arid parts of Gujarat.
Where there aren't many people or factories.
Exactly. But the demand, the big cities, the factories, the millions of AC units is in Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru. You have a massive geography mismatch.
So you have to move the power hundreds of kilometers.
Right. But that's not the hard part. The hard part is this. Imagine a big cloud suddenly passes over that solar farm in Rajasthan. The power generation can drop from thousands of megawatts to near zero in seconds.
Oh, wow.
If you feed that wildly fluctuating power into the normal national grid, you can crash the frequency. You can cause continent-wide blackouts. It's incredibly dangerous.
So the green energy corridor is a kind of shock absorber for the grid.
It's a dedicated high-capacity transmission superhighway. It's engineered specifically to handle those massive fluctuations and transmit renewable energy across state lines without destabilizing the national grid. It is the technology part of that NCERT definition made real.
Without the core.
Without the corridor, the solar potential of Rajasthan is useless to the rest of the country. It remains just sunshine, not an economic resource.
That is such a critical distinction. Technology is what turns potential into reality. But this leads to a darker question. Does this development, this resource use, always have to come at a cost? The NCERT has a section on the crisis of consumption, and it quotes Mahatma Gandhi.
It's perhaps the most famous quote in all of environmental geography.
There is enough for everyone's need, but not for anyone's greed.
It's iconic.
It's iconic.
Yeah.
But let's be real. Is it just a nice slogan? Or is it a policy directive? How do you apply that in an exam?
You apply it because it's a fundamental critique of the entire modern economic model. And the UPSC takes this ethical dimension very, very seriously. Look at the 2025 GS2 paper, question 16. Inequality in the ownership pattern of resources is one of the major causes of poverty.
That sounds like a direct application of the greed concept.
It is. This is the paradox of poverty, also known as the resource curse. We often talk about it. Look at a state like Jharkhand or Odisha. They are sitting on the richest mineral deposits in the entire country. Iron, coal, bauxite, you name it. By all logic, they should be the richest states, are they?
No, far from it. They're often at the bottom of the Human Development Index.
Why? Ask yourself why. It's because the resource is extracted to fuel industrial growth somewhere else in the big cities or for export to other countries. The local population gets the pollution, the displacement from their land, the loss of their forests.
Their need for a clean environment and a stable home is sacrificed.
It's sacrificed for the nation's or the corporation's greed for growth. That is the inequality in the ownership pattern that the question is asking you to analyze. It's not just about who owns the mine on paper, it's about who pays the real price for the mining.
So the wealth is extracted from the land and poverty is injected into the community.
That's a very sharp way to put it.
It reminds me of another question from 2015. This was GS1, question 20. It was about the discovery of oil in the Arctic Sea.
Oh, the Arctic dilemma, a classic case study.
The question asked about the economic significance versus the environmental consequences. It feels like the exact same story, just on a global scale.
It is. It's the same pattern. The Arctic ice is melting because of global warming, which is an existential disaster. But that melting reveals new oil and gas reserves and opens up new shipping routes, which, from a purely economic perspective, is seen as an opportunity.
So nations are rushing to claim it.
Exactly. They are rushing to drill. It highlights the absolute insane tension between our current economic model and our long-term survival. We are celebrating a symptom of our own destruction because it creates a new resource to fight over.
That is incredibly bleak.
Yeah.
But it feels very accurate. It seems like every time we touch a resource, we leave a scar.
We do.
Which leads us perfectly into part 3, land degradation, the cost of progress.
The bill coming due. And the NCERT is quite specific here. It doesn't just say land gets bad. It actually categorizes the causes by region. It gives you a map of the damage.
Right. It lists mining as a major cause, and I'm quoting here, mining sites are abandoned after excavation work is complete, leaving deep scars.
Then it talks about over-irrigation, specifically citing it as the main cause of degradation in Punjab and Haryana, which leads to waterlogging, salinity, and alkalinity.
And finally, it mentions overgrazing, which it says is a major issue in states like Gujarat, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh.
A very clear region-specific diagnosis.
Let's take mining first. We just talked about the scars. The UPSC asked about this in 2013, GS3 question 19. It was about illegal mining and this concept of go and no-go zones.
This was a huge policy controversy about a decade ago. The Ministry of Environment and Forests under Jairam Ramesh tried to classify all of India's coal blocks. Go zones were areas where the forest cover was relatively sparse, so mining could be permitted with clearances.
And no-go zones.
No-go zones were the dense, pristine, old-growth forests, the critical biodiversity hotspots, the headwaters of rivers. The idea was to declare these off-limits to mining forever.
A sort of environmental traffic light. Green for go, red for no-go.
Exactly, but the concept failed politically. The demand for coal, the development imperative from the industry and power ministries, was just too strong. The no-go zones were eventually opened up. The question asks about the consequences of illegal mining, which is even worse. It's not just about stealing coal, it's about mining without any environmental clearances, destroying riverbeds for sand and fueling a parallel mafia economy.
It's the breakdown of the rule of law over a nation's resource.
Absolutely.
Now, what about that second cause? The over-irrigation in Punjab. That connects directly back to our 43% plains discussion. We have the perfect land, we added a ton of water, and now the land is sick.
It is the dark side of the Green Revolution. In the 1960s, we were desperate for food. We faced famine, so we went all in. We built dams, dug canals, and encouraged farmers to pump groundwater like there was no tomorrow. We flooded the fields to grow high-yield varieties of rice and wheat.
And it worked. In the short term, we achieved food security.
We did. But what does that constant flooding do to the soil in a naturally semi-arid region?
I'm guessing it's not good.
When you over-irrigate, the water on the surface evaporates quickly in the hot sun, but the water leaves the dissolved salts behind. Through capillary action, more salt from below is drawn to the surface. Over decades, a white crust of salt literally forms on the land.
It's called ray or color, right?
Exactly. The land becomes saline, then alkaline. It becomes infertile. We traded long-term soil health for short-term food security.
And now that bill is coming due.
It is.
And then there's overgrazing, which connects to the broader issue of desertification. You mentioned a 2020 question earlier that really caught my eye.
Yes, 2020 GS1, question 5. The process of desertification does not have climatic boundaries.
That's a very strange phrase, no climatic boundaries. Doesn't desertification by definition only happen in, well, deserts?
That's the common misconception, and it's what the question is designed to test. People hear desertification, and they picture the Sahara Desert with sand dunes moving. But scientifically, desertification is defined as the degradation of land in arid, semi-arid, and dry, subhumid areas. It means the biological potential of the land is lost. The soil loses its ability to support life.
So you can create a desert in a place that isn't a traditional desert.
Absolutely. You can create a desert in a relatively green zone. If you cut down all the forest on a hillside, even in a humid area like Cherrapunji or the Western Ghats, and the heavy rain washes away all the topsoil, leaving only bare rock, that is desertification. You have created a biological desert in a rainy climate.
Wow.
That is what the question demands you understand. Desertification is a process driven primarily by human action, deforestation, overgrazing, bad farming practices, not just a climatic accident.
So you, the listener, could be contributing to desertification right now, even if you're nowhere near Rajasthan, just by how your local land is managed. That's a scary thought.
It is. And since we were talking about soil and life, we have to talk about the blood of the land.
Water.
Water.
Part 4, water resources. We are bridging Chapter 1 and Chapter 3 here.
We have to. You cannot discuss land development without talking about water. They are two sides of the same coin.
And the hydrological reality is harsh. The book states it plainly. 34th of the Earth is water, but fresh water is incredibly scarce. Now, there's a bit in the book that looks like filler at first glance. It's a dialogue between two cartoon kids, Pinky and Chintu. Honestly, usually I'd just skip this.
Don't skip it. Never skip the cartoons in the insert. That dialogue is the thesis statement for Indian disaster management.
Really? Because it just reads like, water is good, but floods are bad. Pinky talks about terrible floods in Assam, and Chintu talks about drought and cracked earth.
Look closer at what they represent. Pinky talks about the ravages of flood in the Brahmaputra Valley, houses destroyed, lives lost, a crisis of excess. Chintu talks about the cracked earth, a crisis of scarcity. This isn't just weather. This represents the extreme spatial and temporal inequality of water in India.
We are a country that is simultaneously drowning and dying of thirst.
Precisely. And that leads directly to the 2019 GS1, question 14. What is water stress? How and why does it differ regionally in India?
Water stress. It sounds like what I feel when I forget my water bottle at the gym. But technically, what is it?
Technically, it's when the annual demand for water exceeds the annual available supply. The NCERT asks a haunting question that's related to this. Why is it predicted that by 2025, nearly 2 billion people will live in absolute water scarcity?
Wait, 2025, that's not the future. That is literally now. We are living inside the prediction.
We are, and the regional difference part of that UPSC question is key. It's the Pinky and Chintu problem. For example, why does Cherrapunji, famously one of the wettest places on Earth, suffer from acute water stress in the dry season?
Because all that rain just runs off. There's no way to store it.
Exactly. The topography is wrong, the soil is gone, it rains, it floods, it flows away to Bangladesh, and a month later the taps run dry. That is management stress. Now look at Punjab. Why do they have water stress?
Because they pumped all the groundwater out for agriculture.
Right, their aquifers are collapsing. That is exploitation stress. The reasons for the stress differ from region to region, but the result is the same. No water when you need it.
So what are the solutions? The NCERT talks about the big ones. Multi-purpose projects dams. The temples of modern India, as Nehru famously called them.
But the text is very balanced. It also suggests debating the advantages and disadvantages. It is not purely pro-dam, it acknowledges the controversy.
And the UPSC picked that debate right up in 2024, GS3, question 13. What are the major challenges faced by the Indian irrigation system in recent times?
The challenges are massive. We built these huge dams to solve the crisis. But dams silt up over time, reducing their storage capacity. They displace millions of people, usually the most vulnerable, tribal communities, creating massive social unrest. And the canal networks that come from them are often inefficient. So much water evaporates or leaks before it ever reaches the tail-end farmer.
So big infrastructure has big problems. Does that mean we should go back to the old ways? The NCERT mentions traditional methods, specifically rooftop rainwater harvesting in Rajasthan, the Tanka system.
I love the Tanka system. It is absolutely brilliant, simple engineering. You build a large, cool, underground tank in the courtyard of your house. You connect pipes from your roof to it. You catch every single drop of rain that falls on your property.
It keeps the water cool, it keeps it clean.
It's self-reliance. It's water security at the household level.
But there is a fascinating and almost tragic note in the NCERT. It says that in parts of Rajasthan, the practice of rooftop harvesting is actually declining.
Why? That makes no sense. Why would you stop saving water when you live in a desert?
Because of the Indira Gandhi Canal. The government built this massive canal that brought perennial water from the Himalayan rivers of Punjab all the way to the Thar Desert. So people stopped maintaining their tankas. They became dependent on the government pipe.
That is a classic case of modern convenience killing sustainable tradition. We replaced a resilient, decentralized, community-owned system with a centralized, fragile, state-owned one.
And now, as the canal itself faces challenges with silting and overall water stress in the river basin returns, we are realizing the mistake we made.
Which is why the UPSC asked about micro-irrigation in 2021. That was GS3, question 4. Micro-irrigation drip and sprinkler systems is essentially a return to the logic of the Tanka.
Also,
It's about valuing every single drop of water. But it uses modern technology to do it. It delivers water directly to the roots of the plant instead of just flooding the whole field.
it's going full circle. We need the efficiency and the mindset of the old traditions, but with the tools of the new age.
Precisely. Which brings us to the final and perhaps the most important part of this whole discussion, conservation and the future.
Part 5. And it all starts with one term, sustainable development, the definition we all know by heart.
The Brundtland Commission definition: development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs.
But in the exam, you need to apply it. You can't just write the definition. And I'm looking at the 2018 GS3 question 1. Access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy is the sine qua non to achieve Sustainable Development Goals. SDGs.
Sine qua non.
Fancy Latin.
It means without which, nothing. An absolutely essential condition. The question beautifully links energy, a resource, to the SDGs development. You cannot have sustainable development if your energy source is dirty because it causes climate change, or if your people can't afford it because that perpetuates poverty.
But is it that easy? Can we just decide to be sustainable? The 2025 GS1 question 19 throws a real wrench in the gears. It says, achieving sustainable growth with emphasis on environmental protection could come into conflict with poor people's needs.
This is the ultimate dilemma. This is the resource and development conflict in its rawest form. Imagine you want to protect a forest. You want to declare it a national park or a no-go zone to save the tigers and preserve it as a carbon sink. That is sustainable growth. That is environmental protection.
Sounds great. What's the conflict?
The conflict is, what if that forest is home to a tribal community that depends on it to gather firewood to cook their food? What if they need to graze their cattle there to survive? When you put up a fence to save nature, you might be starving the poor who live inside it.
So if you protect the forest, you could hurt the poor today. If you allow them to cut the forest, you hurt everyone, including them tomorrow.
That is the conflict, and there is no easy one-size-fits-all answer. As a civil servant, you are paid to stand in that gap and navigate that conflict. You have to find the balance. Can you provide them with LPG cylinders so they don't need firewood? Can you employ them as forest guards so they have a stake in conservation? Those are the real policy challenges.
Let's look at some specific conservation cases the UPSC has highlighted over the years. Wetlands, for example.
Vital ecosystems. People used to think they were wastelands to be filled in. Now we know they are the kidneys of the landscape. They filter our water, they recharge groundwater, they control floods.
And UPSC has asked about them. 2014 prelims asked about them on True Record.
Which lists wetlands of international importance that are under threat. And the 2018 GS3 paper asked us to explain the Ramsar concept of wise use.
Wise use, not no use. I like that distinction.
It's critical. Conservation doesn't mean putting nature in a museum under glass and saying, don't touch. It means use it wisely so that it lasts. You can practice sustainable fishing in a wetland, but you don't drain it to build a shopping mall. That is the essence of wise use.
And what about minerals? We've talked about the damage from mining. The 2025 GS3 question 17 asks, why is mining considered an environmental hazard? Explain the remedial measures.
This circles right back to the land degradation we discussed. The hazard part is easy deforestation, water pollution, air pollution. But the remedial measures part is what the examiner is looking for.
So you can't just stop mining.
We can't just stop. We need the steel for bridges, the copper for wires, the limestone for cement. But we have to stop the destruction associated with it. We have to force companies to practice scientific mining.
What does that look like? Land reclamation?
Yes. Filling back the pits after the ore is extracted, planting trees on the overburdened dumps of forestation, properly treating the tailings, the toxic sludge left over from processing before releasing it. It costs money, but it is the rent we must pay to the earth for using its resource.
And finally, let's talk about urbanization, the cities. There's a brilliant quote from the 2015 GS1 paper, question 19. Smart cities in India cannot sustain without smart villages.
I love this question. It connects everything we've talked about. Cities are, by their nature, resource sinks. They consume. They don't produce their own food, their own water, their own raw materials.
And villages are the resource sources.
Villages are the sources. They produce the food. They are where the water comes from. They provide the labor. They are where the raw materials are extracted.
So if you neglect the village,
if you build gleaming, smart cities with high-tech grids and fancy metros, but you leave the villages in the dark ages with collapsing agriculture, no water, and no jobs, what happens?
everyone moves to the city looking for a better life.
Exactly. The migration pressure becomes unmanageable. The city's infrastructure collapses under the weight of the slums. So, smart villages, the urban mission, providing urban amenities in rural areas, is actually a prerequisite for sustainable smart cities. You have to develop the source to sustain the sink.
Wow, we have covered a lot of ground, literally and figuratively.
We have. It's all connected.
Let's just take a moment and recap this journey for everyone. We started with the physical anatomy of India, the 43% plains, 30% mountains, 27% plateaus. We saw how these aren't just numbers, but the absolute determinants of our agriculture, like the Kharif and Rabi cycles.
Our industrial location with the shifting logic of the iron and steel industry.
And even our disasters, like the landslides in the Himalayas.
Then we looked at how we classify resources, how technology turns a simple rock into a nuclear resource, and how something like the Green Energy Corridor turns sunshine into electricity for the whole country.
We discussed the crisis of consumption, Gandhi's need versus greed, and the tragic paradox of poverty in our most resource-rich states.
We analyzed land degradation, the deep scars of mining, the white salt of over-irrigation in Punjab, and the creeping man-made desertification that has no climatic boundaries.
And we looked at water, the management stress, the displacement caused by big dams, and the forgotten wisdom of traditional systems like the Tanka.
And finally, we landed on the future, sustainable development. The hard choices that have to be made between protecting the environment and feeding the poor, the need for wise use of our wetlands, and the unbreakable link between smart villages and smart cities.
The pattern is just crystal clear. The NCERT provides the static foundation. It gives you the what. The UPSC PYQs, they ask for the dynamic application. They demand the so what and the what now.
You cannot master this exam by just reading the book. It's impossible. You have to interrogate the book. For every sentence you read, you have to ask, how does this fact affect a farmer in Vidarbha? How does this statistic change our foreign policy towards the Middle East?
Before we go, as always, we want to leave you with a provocative thought, something to chew on as you continue your prep.
We talked about the go-no-go zones for mining and the paradox of poverty. So here's the question for you to ponder. If India possesses vast mineral reserves located under its most pristine forests and the ancestral lands of its most vulnerable communities, but extracting those minerals destroys the ecological balance and displaces those very communities, is that wealth actually a resource, or is it a curse?
Where do you draw the line between national GDP and local survival? If you were the district magistrate and the order came to your desk, would you sign the paper to evict a village to mine the coal that powers the hospital in a distant city?
Mull on that, because one day you might be the one holding that pen.
That's a heavy thought, but a very necessary one for anyone aspiring to be in that chair.
It's indeed.
All right, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. If this episode helped you connect the dots, if you saw the matrix behind the map, please hit that subscribe button on the Simplified UPSC by PPP channel. It really helps us grow.
And please, if you are capable, do consider supporting us on Patreon. It keeps the lights on, the mics hot, and this content flowing. We truly appreciate every bit of support.
A massive shout out once again to our current supporters. You guys are the backbone of this whole operation. And for everyone listening, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Let us know what stood out to you. Did the green energy corridor explanation finally click? Did the Pinky and Chintu analysis change your mind? We want to know.
And remember to head over to the public Telegram channel for your free notes and practice PYQs.
And for the truly serious learners, the private library is waiting. DM us on the public channel to get access to the premium content, the model answers, and the entire video series.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.
Stay curious, stay simplified. Goodbye.